Good afternoon, everyone. We will get started shortly. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started shortly. I noticed that someone had posted a question saying that they had an issue The video player has stopped. I don't know, Shane, have you seen that at all before, or Roxy? Just want to make sure people get the most value out of the session.
I've only seen it with this current group. Some of them were talking about this issue yesterday, and all of them have said that the error says that it is a network problem. So it might have something to do with either the intranet or the VPN from where they are able to connect from.
Okay, all right. So I guess the best suggestion for that, in case you have something slowing you down, I would just say close, the browser, the application, and reopen it again. Sometimes rebooting your computer helps. I would say also see what other applications you have open. If you have things that are streaming, or something that's downloading or anything like that, definitely on your device, whether it be if you're watching this on your iPad or your phone or your laptop, I would say try and close those as much as you can, and then whatever other loads on your bandwidth that may slow you down, just monitor that. So if you have somebody that's also drawing from your bandwidth, downloading something, that those things will impact your performance. So I would say just keep all of those things in mind, and hopefully you'll have a better experience. As Shane said, we've had those clear up just because of network bandwidth issues. But we're going to get started. Hopefully you guys can take care of those things, and we'll do introductions and stuff, so the people who are rebooting or closing other issues can get caught up with us. So let's start by doing introductions. So my name is Ali Asghari. I'm a customer success manager within the federal account base. And, I focus on trying to build good use cases with customers and helping my customers get value out of Office 365 and specifically Teams. Shane, do you want to introduce yourself, sir?
Sure thing. My name is Shane, and I am a service advisor at the Microsoft Store in Pentagon City. And during our remote operations, I have been helping out with training for Teams as well as some other Office software. But I will be answering questions in the chat, so feel free to ask any questions you have.
Shane, and Roxy, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. My name is Roxy. I am a customer success manager working with our civilian accounts on Teams adoption and any customizations and how you just really drive the best use cases to accomplish your agency's mission with Microsoft Teams. And I'll be supporting in the chat today. So please feel free to drop any questions that you have at any time, and we'll be here to answer. Thank you for joining.
Excellent. Thank you both. I saw another question saying that they're getting the same error message. Again, this session will be recorded. I hope you guys can attend live so you can ask questions. I would say, just to kind of reiterate what I said earlier, try and close any applications that you're not using that may be drawing your bandwidth. See what other things that you have, whether it be at your device or anything that's pulling on your internet connection, and see if you can shut those down and then focus your bandwidth on this session. I think will improve your performance. All right, just a high-level agenda. So this is the doing more with Teams. The assumption is that you've attended at least the basic session of Teams. We're going to fly through some concepts, some of the basic concepts. So definitely recommend, if you hadn't already gone to one of the basic sessions that we've done, this is one session that's part of a slew of sessions that we do, and they kind of build on each other. So I won't be spending as much time talking about the basic functions. The thought is that you've seen that in some of the other sessions that we've done. If you hadn't, I would consider going to a basic session and then following up with this intermediate session, just so that way you can grow your knowledge. It's kind of like the building blocks for some of the content that we're going to do here. But in terms of looking at the agenda, we're going to focus in on some Teams ownership and management. These are like the higher level administrative functions in Teams. So they'll speak to if you're an owner of a team and what some of the things that you can do. We'll talk about file storage and management, some power tips and tricks, managing teams, channel priority, and controlling your view with notifications. So that's kind of like the main crux of what we plan to talk about. If there is anything in particular that you're interested in, please put in the Q&A and we'll get to it. If we get through a section in which if I'm explaining something and you just want to see it again, or if you have questions about that, put it in the Q&A, and what I'll do is I'll pause kind of after every section and just make sure that we've answered any of the questions, so that way we can all be on the same place. So I am going to share screen. All right, so what I'm basically doing is I set up another demo instance. So keep in mind, everything that you're seeing here is something that will occur in a browser version. So what we've done at Microsoft is created as much as parity as we can between the 3 different ways of using Teams, whether it be through the actual Teams client, so the application that's on your desktop, or through the browser, which we're looking at now, or whether it be through your mobile device. So yeah, so those experiences are going to be somewhat similar. They'll be a little bit different. Just keep in mind, everything that you're seeing now is in a browser in a test environment that we have created. So the first thing that came up is I'm just going to kind of build on the basic foundation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about chat. So I'm assuming by this point, most of you have some experience in doing chat, and you realize that you can send messages to each other and people can message back. So it's, if I say, right, this isn't a group chat, so I'll show you how to do a group chat really quickly in case you're just doing one-to-one chats. So as you do a chat, you can specify the number of people. That right now, if you're only doing a one-on-one chat, you could type your message there. But in addition to just doing a one-on-one chat, you can also add multiple people. So let me add Abby, right? And I can add multiple people. Let me just add one more. Right, but I have a question for you all. Right, so notice a couple of things here. So this message that I wrote gets populated into the individual chat boxes of these 3 people. If I wanted to have this as a specific topic, then I could do that by hitting this pencil. So see this pencil I selected, right? And basically what you can do is name this. So let's say Teams Training Group. I'll save this. So if you notice on the left side that this is renamed to Teams Training Group, if you can look at the pictures there, it'll tell you who's part of that group. Right, and you can communicate like that, basically. It says who I've added, right? I've added Roxy and 2 others to the chat. I'm working as Joanna right now. So Joanna's changed the name to Teams Training Group. And basically those things, it allows you to reorganize your chat topics. Right, if I wanted to add a file, I can select a file here from my computer, right? Let's just say there's something I wanted to access, right? I can pick something here and it would go and it would add into this the chat group, right? And it could be managed for all the files that we shared as a group. In addition, let's say that I was working with these people and I wanted to add additional people. So here's where you add additional people. So if I type let's say Victor, I want to add Victor. So the key thing to note here, so let's say this training group is talking about a bunch of features, and some of it they want to include Victor on, and some of them that they don't want to include Victor on. So there's a couple of options here that will give me a sense of control on what I wanted to share in this chat with Victor. So this is basically the history of the chat. In this case, we just had one message, but in the case where we've been working on several days on several, and we've exchanged many messages, it gives me the option of whether or not to include the chat history. So the chat history is all the messages prior to the point where I've added Victor. So anything prior to that, it allows me to select whether I want to include the chat history, right? And the first options don't include chat history. So Victor will get this message and it'll be basically blank. All the previous messages will only be available for the people who've had it previously, right? The other option, I'm going to go to the third option, is include all the chat history. So in this case, Victor will be able to see everything that I've added in from the beginning of chat till now, and anything that goes on henceforth. And the last, or the middle option, is if you wanted to just include the history from a previous period. So in this case, you have to specify the number of days. So let's say if I wanted to have the last 5 days, I wanted to share with Victor. Prior to that, I don't want him to see what was there. Right? So now Victor's added to this group, and he can only see the messages in the last 5 days. So, right message. Okay. All right. Nice that you can. I'm glad you can join us, Victor. I don't know if you guys just saw what I did. I did what's called an @ message here. You should have seen it in your basic class, but just in case you didn't, it's a way to call somebody out, right? And really what it means, how you do that is you hit the @ symbol, and then you type the name of the person that you want to mention. Let's say in this case, I put Roxy, and Roxy's full name comes up. But if I wanted to just keep it to such that I only wanted to show her first name, in this case, our address book is organized by her first name space last name. So we like to address at Microsoft address each other informally just by first name. I hit the backspace, her last name is removed. I have a question for you when you get. So what will happen, I don't know if Roxy can respond to that, or mention me, it will come up differently in your activity bar. So in Roxy's activity bar, it will come such that someone's mentioned her, right? So it's just something that will show up a little bit differently. See, here you go. Here's where Roxy mentioned me. There's the @ symbol there. And that's kind of important to note when you are having chat conversations. As people start transitioning things that they're doing traditionally in email, and they're moving some of these items where there's multiple conversations they're having, and instead of having 20, 30 email messages or even more on a topic, we find some of the best examples of how to manage that is to bring that into a team, and then within that team, go ahead and have all that the chatter or the messages occur in the chat or posts area of a team, whether it be in a chat here or whether it be in the actual Teams aspect of Teams here. Then that way it's consolidated in one spot. Again, if you wanted to add somebody to it, you can easily do that. Again, really quickly, because I'm sure we addressed in other classes, the basic class, you can attach files, emojis, Giphies, stickers, and you can schedule a meeting. And the example that you'd want to do where you schedule a meeting here is if you had a bunch of people that you're chatting with and you wanted to maybe have a formalized time that everyone comes together and talks, you could do that. You can bring in other assets like Stream and a bunch of different apps, so that's definitely something to note there. Also, what you'd want to do if you wanted to initiate a call to everyone, so let's say that something really critical came up, there's, let's say if you're in IT and a system went down and everyone's chatting in this chat, and you're like, hey, let's jump on a call right away. You can schedule a meeting, but if you wanted to just call everyone immediately, you can schedule a call or a video call, and that will allow you to ring everyone's device, and people can answer it, or if they're busy, then they can write, hey, I'll write you back later, or I'll join you later. So those are the basic things that you can do in a chat. Some of the higher level functions.
Hey,
yes.
Sorry, I don't want to disturb you, but
Yeah, sure.
Could you enlarge your screen a little bit?
Okay, sure. All right.
Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. Sorry about that. I appreciate you letting me know. Okay, so I just zoomed. In case anyone's interested in how I did that, you hit the 3 dots. This is within the browser. You go to Zoom and you change the percentage to what you want it to be. All right, thanks for that, Roxy. I appreciate it. The one other thing, as you get more and more creative in everything that you do in Teams, right? The concept of apps is something that's going to become a major thing that will help you guys. Really what it is you're integrating different assets into your conversations, whether it be a chat or whether it be a team. In this case, we have Excel, OneNote, PowerPoint, and Word as the basic Office apps. And then you've got Power BI, which is your data analytics tool. And then you've got your Stream, which is your video service. So let's say if you wanted to add in one of those assets, you can select the assets. And then you have to specify that which one you have that you're interested in showing. So let's just say it's a stream video. It would default to your stream videos and allow you to make a selection that way. Okay. I talked really quickly about some of the higher level functions in chat. Does anyone have, I'm going to pause for a bit and ask my team, is there any specific chat level questions that have come up? Or any non-chat questions that have come up that I can show?
Yeah, how do you know if somebody has read your chat?
Excellent. So the way that it works, and this works better in the actual the client, there's a little eye that will appear when the message has been read, and Roxy, I don't know if you can go into the test tenant and just show that you've read it. So people can see what it looks like. But basically an eye will show and it will have like a little eye, and it shows that someone has read it. Good question. Is there anything else? Okay. I'm going to go to Teams now, and I thought I saw an earlier question about creating teams in the chat. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So as you see, your list of teams start showing up on the left pane, right? These are all the teams that either I've created or someone has invited me to. The bottom of this list is join or create a team. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is kind of like a basic function, but I noticed that someone asked. You go to create a team. So A couple of options here, whether you build it from scratch, and that's like where if you're building something that you don't want to leverage anything that's existed, or you have the option of building it from an Office 365 group or another team. And that's basically looking at the security construct and meaning who has access and leveraging some of what's already exists. For those who are unfamiliar, a group is basically a consolidation of identities. So, so we have identities of mine, in this case, I'm Loretta. You've got identities of Abby and Roxy. So the fact that we're sharing content when we've built a group that allows us to safely share content, that's the important thing there. But in this case, let's build it from scratch. And you have two options, whether it be a private team or a public team. A public team is anyone who's inside your organization who's got login and ID to enter teams can join. It's open, so you're not really restricting anything. And then you go on private, and private is where you're going to have to go through specifically and name it and invite specific people to that team, right? I'm not going to go through that process again. That's probably something that you've been covered in your basics teams class or your 101, but that's how you do that. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, going back to chat, I see someone wrote, how do you go to a breakout session in chat? So let me show you how to do it in Teams, and then I'll come back to it and show you how to do it in chat. I know a lot of my customers have been asking me about how to do breakout sessions, and I'll go back to Teams and I'll show you the example that I built out here. It's just a really simple example. So a lot of my customers ask about, if you have a main team and then you have meetings within that team, and then you want to take your main meeting and then break it out into smaller sessions, right? So in this case, let's say that we have a team of 20 people, and this is the one that I'm using. It's called breakout session example, right? So here's where you do all of the main session work. So meaning, let's say that you have a meeting in here, so you go ahead and you schedule a meeting, or you can have the conversation here, right? So in this case, what you'd want to do is have the meeting that occurs specifically within the main topic. And then what you do is you allocate people to different breakout sessions. So let's say if there's 20 people in this main group, right, you can start a meeting in this session right here, and then allocate, you can set up private channels for breakout session 1 and breakout session 2. Have people who are 1 through 10 in breakout session 1, and you can include them as membership in that, and I'll show you how that works. And then in breakout session 2, you can have your membership there for people 11 through 20. And then you can have a moderator that comes in and can post specific topics and can kind of facilitate that conversation. And then when it's time to go back to the regular session, you just join the main session here. If that makes sense. Also, in case you wanted to just have your meeting and your main session in your meeting, what you can do if you're interested, and there was someone asking about it in chat. So what I did is I included a number of people in a chat, and I renamed it breakout session A, and I have another breakout session B. So just as you have in those channels, you have people 1 through 10 in the breakout session 1 or A, and then breakout session B, you've got your second group of people 11 through 20. You include their names here, and then if you want to initiate a video chat, you could, or regular audio call, you would do that here, and it would initiate a call to them. With the understanding of whenever that breakout session ends, that you'd go back to the main session. So you wouldn't necessarily have to build a chat in the main session, but you can. The assumption is that you would go back to that team, and that team can manage what's happening for the main session. So this is a basic way to tier some of your meetings. And let's say if you have a main meeting and then you have a breakout session in that meeting, then that's how you manage that. Okay, is there any questions there? Okay, I'm going to manage the team now. So as an owner, for this specific team, breakout session example, there's 2 owners. Always recommend you have at least 2 owners of a team. The reason why is, let's say that, so I'm Joanna. If I locked myself out of my account, or I forgot my password, or for whatever reason, let's say that I left the organization, you always have a person who's kind of your backup, who can go ahead and do the administrative level functions, right? So in this case, we've got 0 members and guests, but if I wanted to add a member, let me add Victor, right? And it'll default to be a member. Add Abby. These are all my colleagues, by the way. I'm sure some of you guys have been working with them. Right, they'll show up here. You notice it was 0 before, it shows you who the members are. With guests specifically, if there's someone who's external to your organization and you wanted them to collaborate with you, I know for some of my customers, they've invited me to some of their teams. I can chat with them, I can add content in their teams. There's a whole list of functions that you can control from a security aspect within the tenant, and this is where you'd want more of the Office 365 administrators to do this and the Teams administrators to do this. There is a guest policy, there's an external access policy. That's where you'd want to get those configured, and that will allow guests to enter your teams. Right. So if you wanted to have specific apps available in the teams, they would come up here. We'll talk more about apps a little bit later. We talked about members, let's talk about channels. So basically all the channels that exist here, in this case there's only 2. If you want to show for members, right? Select that, and you select that. Right, and let's say I didn't want this to show for all members. I can just have it just for me, but in this case, I want this one to show up as well. All right, so that's pretty simple about having channels and having different channels show up for different people. Right, so as you start growing your teams, you're going to have more to administer. And then the challenge exists about having the focus on the channels that you care about more than others, right? And you can unfollow a channel, and then that way you're getting less notifications. It gets suppressed in terms of your activity, and you're less distracted by it. So let's say that if I was working on something for this breakout session example, and it's over. I'll follow it when I'm interested in it. When I'm not, I'll unfollow it. But in case I want to go back, I can also do that. I can refollow it. Okay, I want to talk about actual Teams administration. So let's go one by one. So team picture. Sometimes people think, well, do you really need a picture for this team? And generally, if you notice that what happens is it picks a color, Teams automatically picks a color, and then it abbreviates the title. So let's say if you've got a bunch of teams that have similar names. So let's say that if you're working at COVID response, it's COVID, response. Every team starts with COVID response. So the icon will look somewhat similar. It'll be a different color. It'll be like CR this or CR that. I find that if you go ahead and change the picture, and this really uploads a picture, it'll specify kind of where I wanted to go ahead and draw upon that. Right, you upload that picture wherever you save it locally somewhere, whether it be in OneDrive or on your desktop, and you pull that picture in, and that will allow you to make that team stand out from others. So even in this case, we haven't done that here for any of these teams, and there's a few red ones here, so they start looking a little bit alike. So as you get more and more teams, you'll find that if you take that picture and then customize it to any image, basically, I think it'll tell you a variety of different image standards or quality that you can have, whether it be a GIF or a JPEG or a PNG. I find that it helps distinguish one from another. Now, keep in mind your organization has to allow that. Sometimes some organizations block that ability to change the picture. Okay. Member permissions. So as you have different teams, you have channels associated with them, you have the ability to turn off and on different things for each team and channel. So you can be open and allow people to do anything, or you can control it and limit what people can do. In this case, we can select whether we want to allow members to create and update channels. So it's pretty self-explanatory. If I wanted members to not be able to create channels or update information about channels, I would deselect this. Generally, if we're working with somebody and you want them to update the channels, unless you're trying to keep their roles limited to just reviewing information for the channels that already exist, then that's fine. Consequently, what I would do is if I really wanted to control it, I would create private channels and have a subset of audience there. Which brings us to the next point. Allow members to create private channels. You should have learned this in the previous class, but if you hadn't, basically what it means is, let's say if you have a team of 20 people and you've got, everyone has access to the first 3 channels. The last 2 may be, something that's administrative in nature, and you don't necessarily want everyone to be able to see it. So that way you could create that private channel, and only the people who are in that private channel, which was a subset of the people who are in the team, have the ability to see the data that's in that channel. So as such, this either allows or limits the ability for a member to create a private channel. Remember, owners can do all of these things, right? You're not really controlling owners. All you're doing is controlling what members can do. And the reason being is you want to have like 2 or 3 members or owners, and the rest of them you'd want them to be members. One of the things you have to be careful of, sometimes people will default and make all of their members be owners, or they won't have any members. Everyone will be an owner. Keep in mind that you can delete channels as an owner, and you can delete the whole team. So just make sure that you're thinking about those types of scenarios when you're allocating those roles. Traditionally, what we recommend is having 2 or 3 owners who are actually managing the team, and the rest are going to be members. All right, so we talked about channels, private channels, allow members to delete and restore channels. So we kind of talked a little bit about that. Again, you probably should be a little bit cautious about doing this, just because it's a process when you delete the channel to restore it. So we may want to refrain from doing that. So I would generally deselect that, keeping it selected now though. Allow members to add and remove apps. So these are apps that we assign to a specific channel and team, whether you want them to add or remove them or not. Generally, I find that most people don't. They have the ability to do that. It's a good practice because that's how people collaborate. But it's up to you and how you want to manage your team. Allow members to create, update, and remove tabs. So these are, I'll show you tabs, but it's basically the different areas within a channel that you can add assets to. I'll show you that as we add more and more apps to those spaces. But again, it allows you to control that. Allow members to create, update, and remove connectors. So connectors are the things that connect us to apps. So they're related to apps there. You can allow or deny someone's ability to do that. Give members the option to delete their messages. That's always a good thing to do in case someone wrote something and they're like, oh, I didn't want to write it. You can either get them to delete it or the option below to edit their message. So those are generally good practices to have. But if you're interested in tracking everything that was written, then you may want to limit that. Okay. Any questions about administration of members and permissions associated with it? All right. Enable channel creation. So allow guests to create and update channels. So these are specific guest permissions. So you have to initially have guest permissions set up within your tenant, and that's where your Teams administrator would be able to do that. And then once you have the ability for guests to enter, you won't be able to really affect this if you don't have a guest policy. So once you have a guest policy, you can allow guests to create and update channels. You can allow guests to delete channels. I would be a little bit wary of selecting that. Generally, you want guests to just put information within channels, not necessarily create them or delete them. But it's all depending on what you're comfortable with. Okay, app mentions. So as you noticed before when I was mentioning Victor in the chat, you have the ability to app mention, whether it be in the chat, whether it be in the posts of a team. So specifically this section relates to that, where you hit the @ symbol and then you write their name to call them out. Show members the option to add a team or a team name, and this will give everyone a notification on the team. So this is just like how you @ mention a person. You can @ mention a team, and everyone on that team will get that alert, right? And the activity bar on the left, the top left, will light up for that specific @ mention. The same thing is true for a channel. Give members the option to @ channel or @ channel name. This will notify everyone and mention the channel. So these are things that generally people put on, but if people are doing it all the time, it can be distractive and create a lot of noise within your channel. So you may want to monitor that and change it if you're finding it's too much. Okay, team code. Share this code so people can join teams directly. You won't get join requests. So this is if you wanted to have a specific code for a team, and it's something that's randomly generated, right? I'm not going to select that right now because I want it to be this team to be managed. But the code you'll get that code, and then only people who know what that code is. So if I had this as a team code channel, or a team code, a team that has a code in it, if I search on that team, it'll prompt me for a code. If I can enter the code, then I can join that team. So it's just something to keep in mind. Keep in mind also, guests can't join teams that have a team code. All right, fun stuff. So some people love emojis, memes, GIFs, stickers, right? Others don't. So you, as an administrator of a team, you have the ability to turn them off and on. So if in this case, we're specifying Giphies, whether you want people to use them or be able to draw upon them, you select that. Filter out of inappropriate content, so moderate or strict, those different things that you can do. If you want to know more about that, you can hit this, the information. But basically, it's how you flag inappropriate content. Stickers and memes, so whether you want to enable stickers and memes, and then custom memes. So if you have memes that someone has downloaded externally, you can get them put within Teams and upload them appropriately. All right, so I think I went through all the different admin functions within a team. So this is kind of our first bullet between team ownership and management. I wanted to pause for a second and see if we have any questions within this area that I can address.
No questions. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent, thank you. Okay, next I wanted to talk about channel management and apps a little bit. If you notice, every team has their post section. This is the main conversation that you want to have with your team pertaining to the subtopic or channel. So let's say that I was working with Abby, Roxy, and Victor, and instead of creating an email, we wanted to create a team to talk about this specific topic. Instead of sending a bunch of email messages, we put that conversation in here. Any files that we want, we post the files in this area here, right? You can upload them, you can create new folders, right? And then if you can select a specific file and then get a link. And that way, when instead of adding the file multiple places, you store the file one place and then you forward the link, right? Also, you can open it in SharePoint, and I'm going to go to another channel that's got a bunch of files. Give me a second. So I think this one's got a lot of files. I'm going to files. So there's a couple of files here. If I wanted to get a link, here's the link directly to that file. So if I post it, whether it be in a channel or somewhere else, whether it be in a chat, here's the direct place that someone can access it. And that way you're not including multiple attachments. All right. Also, SharePoint view. In terms of file management, if you notice, I opened up a different browser, a different tab, and within my browser. Also, now that I'm mentioning it, I wanted to highlight, I know there's various organizations that are using various versions of different browsers. I know there's a lot of Internet Explorer being used. For the best experience on Teams, you should use the Edge browser. And if you notice, this doesn't look like traditional Edge browser. It's not. It's the Edge Chromium browser. So it uses the Chromium technology or the Chromium standards, and it's merged with Edge. You will have the best experience within any browser using the Chromium Edge version. So I definitely highly recommend that. So as I built out this new tab, so if you look at it, we're no longer in Teams. Where are we at? We're in SharePoint. So, and we're in SharePoint Online specifically. So this brings a whole host of functions in terms of file management. I'm not going to get too much into these because they're more SharePoint related functions. But keep in mind that you can do a bunch of things by clicking on these dots. It allows you to have a little bit more control over it, right? You can share here, but traditionally you don't want to deviate your SharePoint settings from your team settings. So I definitely recommend, as much as you can, go ahead and control all the access by the permissions native into Teams. Okay. Any questions there? Okay. Wiki. So some people like to use wikis. It's just more of like an informational page. You can set up kind of sections and sections, right? So if you wanted to have kind of rules of engagement, or if you wanted to have kind of, let's say that you're building a document and you want to get everyone on the same page about who's doing what. You can have the different sections, and you can build that out here, and that's available for you to use. I traditionally don't use them that often, as much as I could, but if that's something that you like in terms of keeping it like OneNote-like, you can do that there. All right. What I do use quite a bit is pulling in additional apps. So right now we've only allocated first-party apps within this instance of Teams. First-party really means ones that are native to Microsoft. So all of these are Microsoft apps. At minimal, you should have access to all of these apps. If not, then there may be an issue that you might want to look into. So again, I'm not going to go through all of these because we've talked about some of them already, but if you wanted to pull in specific assets, you could do that here. And really what you're trying to build is a concept of having all the related assets to a team. So let's say if we're talking about COVID response for, XYZ, anything related to that, if there's, an overview, in Word that someone's created, if there's a briefing someone's created, whatever the case is, if someone made a video, you want to pull all of those assets into one place, right? Also, what you want to do, these are kind of the standard ones, right? You want to be able to pull in additional apps too. So you notice that these ones are the only ones that come up. What I would say, if you want to have different apps show up, you've got to enable it in your tenant. And really that's the best way to do that is by contacting the help desk. We definitely have a bunch of different apps that you can pull in. And so right now we've only allowed these ones in this tenant, but for instance, there's like polls if you want to do real-time polling. If you want to do like a Kanban board, there's that. There's GitHub. There's a bunch. There's even some of our competitor tools like Salesforce. Any of that data you want to pull in, you can do that. Okay. So I want you guys to get comfortable. As now this is you're an intermediate class. You've been probably using Teams for a few months now. You're familiar with the chat, you're familiar with the meetings, you've set up team sites. Let's see how we can enrich them. And I think adding those tabs is a great way to do that. All right. Any questions?
Not yet.
Okay, great. I see someone, Lorraine said, for clarity, a breakout session in a team. Yeah, so what I was highlighting in that example really quickly is, let's say that you're having using a team to kind of manage a bunch of meetings, right? You can have your main meeting, you can have a breakout session 1, breakout session 2. So everyone's in that main session. You can meet there within the team, or you can schedule a meeting. And then if you want to direct people to a breakout session, you can do that. Or if you wanted to initiate a call, you can initiate one of those calls and do that. Okay. I'm going to talk about commands briefly. So if you go into the top bar and you type in /. So this really highlights a lot of the activity that goes on in Teams. So if you notice, if you're using a different tool, you can select an icon and say, hey, I'm busy, I'm in a meeting, right? This is a quick way to do that. If you hit the /, I could be available, it could be away. So notice I went to away, and so again, I'm Lorena, and my status is away. Change my status based on that. You hit the / again, and then I can be available, and that changes back to green. It's just a really quick way to access some of the different features in terms of where what you're doing, and how people can access you, right? So this is a really good one. I mean, I would say play around with them. They're pretty self-explanatory. Be right back. Busy. You know, you're on the phone talking to someone. You know, this one, do not disturb. I really like this one. So let's say if I'm making a presentation right now, so which I am, you know, I don't want people to reach me and distract me from it. If you notice that this do not disturb moniker shows up in the bottom right of my picture, and then that way I'll only get certain urgent notifications, right? So I'll go into that later, what they are, but basically it goes into the settings and it manages priority access and allows certain people to only reach me if I'm do not disturb, and I can specify who those are. So just going back, so at mentions, so this, and we were setting status before. In this case, I hit slash and then at mentions. It highlights all the different places that someone has mentioned me. It shows it here if I want to cycle through and see what those instances are. You know, I can pull it in here. Pretty simple. Files. So these are just recent files that I've either accessed or I have entered. It's a quick way for you to bring those together at one point in time. Keys, keyboard shortcuts. This kind of goes through quick ways if you guys like to do keyboard commands, what they are to do different things. All right, I'm not going to go through all of them. There's many to go through here. If you are a keyboard shortcut person, you like keyboard shortcuts, I would play around with this and learn some of the ones that are more interesting to you. Okay, so let's say you've got a bunch of teams now and you're interested in tracking or trying to find a team or a channel. So what you want to do is search for it here, right? So let's say if I had a breakout session that I was looking for, I type in break, so searches break. First, the messages that they think that would be the ones that I'm looking for automatically come up, but I didn't do a full search. So in this case, it will do a search and it'll break it down in terms of different aspects or what kind of different things that show up. So the first one, it defaults to messages. So all the messages that have break in it show up here, right? There isn't anyone that has the name break in it. So if there's people who had that name, it would show up here. And then if files, so it's searching the files, and if there's somewhere that says break within the files, it will show up here. All right. Just want you to get comfortable with the different search options. Hit the X and it deletes it. You can also further filter out the options here. Whether you wanted to limit the results to a specific team, you can specify that. Whether it would be a specific file type, you can specify that. So let's say Word, and then you can filter. Nothing will show up because there's nothing that command. But as your number of your teams grow and the number of files grow within a team, you know, that's something really a really helpful tool to find what you're looking for. I know for myself, I'm part of like, I don't know, hundreds of teams, so I use this function quite a bit in case I'm looking for, you know, what was that file that I was using previously, or what was the message someone wrote. You know, I can do that there. Also, as such, if you're interested in remembering what you've done, instead of using the search, there is a couple of ways that you can keep things top of mind. So let's say I wanted to save this message. This file is like really important for me, and I wanted to be able to reference it later. I would save this message, and then it's available for me to reference later. Right. let's say, yeah, so that's something that was helpful, right? And yeah, this allows you to reference those later. In addition, what I like to do in chat sometimes is, let's say we're in a chat and I wanted to, let's say that Roxy in this case was, she wrote a message and she wanted me to action on it, and I didn't action on it. I know some people do this with email. Some people will, either put something as a read status, or they'll put it as unread. So as such, you can do that for messages too. So you notice how this started getting bolded because I marked it as unread. I know some people, sometimes I do this, I'll keep things that I'll triage things that I need to follow up on. I'll keep them unread. And when I see it unread, I'm like, oh, I need to go to it. And it's like, what is it I need to do? And let's say I needed to do this. Oh, I haven't done it yet. I'm going to mark it as unread, and I'll go back. So these are just kind of short ways of, tips and tricks about how to find different things and how to highlight different things and save different things to be able to reference them later. All right. I'm going to stop really quickly for questions. Anything coming up now?
How do you unsave a message that you have marked as saved?
It's a good question. So if you look at, so basically if I go to my profile, if you notice, I'll click on my profile, right? And I go to saved, all the things that I've saved show up here. And let's say that if I wanted to unsave, I just click on this ribbon. It unsaves the message and it's gone. So if I go back to it, let's just show you again. Going here, I unsave that message, so there should be only one thing saved. Just that one thing is saved there. Okay. Anything else, Shane?
That is all for questions right now.
Okay. I'm going to go through some admin level settings here. So if you click on your picture and you go on settings, just walk through some of this really quickly. They're pretty self-explanatory, but as you get more and more comfortable, you want Teams to be working for you the way that you work. There's ways that you can set up your preferences, and if you notice after using it for a few months, you're like, hey, there's too much noise, I need to change my notifications or whatever the case is. This is a place that you want to get more and more familiar, and that way you can fine tune it to your experience. So the first thing up for customization is your resolution, right? So just like how you can do in Office, you can do dark mode. You can also do dark mode in Teams, and they don't have to be consistent. We're only controlling what's in Teams here. So if I select dark mode and I come out, you notice everything that was previously white is now black. Everything that was black is now white. So if you prefer viewing things in this way, that's something that you can. I know a lot of people prefer that. If it's too bright, having the dark mode just reduces the amount of light and sometimes pressure on your eyes. So that's something you can do. Go back to settings. If you want to do high contrast, this is helps some people who want to maintain differences in colors. Sometimes it's just easier to notice from one versus the other. You can just select that. I particularly like the default mode. Sometimes when I'm working at night, I go to dark mode. That's how you change it. But that's where you're allowed to change it and change it back at any point. So languages, you can pull in different languages here if you are more comfortable with a different language. And then the same thing with keyboard shortcuts. Privacy. So some of this content here, you will, they're controlled centrally within the tenant, but in case your tenant's open or they've allowed you to manage this, you'll have to, you'll have the ability to control different level functions here. So you can still receive notifications from people who have priority access when your status is set to do not disturb. So do you remember earlier on I showed that you can hit /DND, do not disturb. Priority access is ability to allow certain people to disturb you when you're at do not disturb, right? So in this case, let's say that I work quite a bit with Roxy. I also work with Abby. So if these people message me, I want them to be able to message me when I'm do not disturb. You may not want anyone, but that's kind of how you manage it. Let's say if there's a supervisor or a boss that you work for and you want to be able to take their calls and chats all the time, that's how you manage that. So block contacts. So let's say if your organization allows you to block contacts, this is how you address it. So some of this has to deal with whatever version of Teams you have and what calling plans that you have. As you probably know, that Teams works as a soft phone, so you can dial calls directly from Teams to a different line, whether it be someone in your organization or whether it be just a regular phone number. As such, when you're getting incoming calls, because if you do have the calling plan and you have a number assigned to you, you can make some modifications on someone calling you if they have no caller ID versus if they do have caller ID. Let's say if there's someone, there's a number you notice and it's like a telemarketer, somehow they got a hold of your phone number, you can block them that way through the privacy notification here. Read receipts lets people know when you've seen their messages and when they've seen yours. So generally it's a good idea to keep this on because you want people to notice that if they sent you a message and you hadn't seen it, maybe because you're on vacation or something came up urgently, they'll have the ability to see that and then they can look at a different way to manage that. Okay, so notifications. So as you get more and more into Teams, how you get notified of different actions in Teams becomes very configurable, right? By default, you'll notice everything in your activity bar. That's the top left, the bell that you have. It's right over here. But in addition to that, you can have different ways of being notified that there's some activity for you in Teams. So the first one is the grouping is mentions, personal mentions, right? So if someone mentioned you by name and they @mentioned you, there is the concept of showing your feed, which is your activity feed, which is the bell to the left, whether you just want the banner, and the banner is something that shows up in the bottom right and it comes up in blue, and banner and email. So when you have banner and email, you have the banner that shows up on the right as well as an email that comes up and shows you that, or email says, hey, someone's personally mentioned you. So you'll notice most of these have the same options and the same things apply, whether it be your activity feed in your activity bar here, right? Whether it be your banner that shows up or whether it be the email. You have the ability to control for personal mentions, channel mentions. So if someone's @mentioned a channel, right? And then if someone's @mentioned the whole team. So you can specify how you want those notifications to be managed, and they can all be different. So if you wanted to have, I wanted to have Teams mentions off, banner for channel mentions, and email for personal mentions, email and banner for personal mentions, you can allow that to occur as well. Okay, hope that was clear. The same settings will appear for messages. So a chat message, so if someone sends a chat message, right, you can get your notifications in here, whether it be through email or through your activity bar. Obviously, they'll definitely go to chat too, but there's just a different way to notify you. You also have the ability to respond to conversations that you started. You can reply to conversations, likes and reactions. So meaning if someone's liked a message, or when you say reactions, just because there's different ways to respond to a message. It could be a like, could be a heart, could be a a laugh. So that's why it says likes and reactions. And then follow channels. So this is if you're in a channel and you want to see what the latest update to that channel is, such as if someone posted something to a comment, someone added a file, right? Those are all things that you can configure to have notifications that way. Here's kind of a catch-all labeled Other, team membership changes, team role changes, notification sounds, missed activity emails, right? These ones are a little bit different, right? Because these ones you can specify call, mention, and chat or off. And then this email activity once every hour, once every 10 minutes, daily. So what I would say, if you are one for the email notifications, or have a frequency that works with you, just because you don't want to be bombarded by notifications. Highlights for you: colleague joined teams. So again, that's when someone that joined a team, or someone in your organization joined a team. Meetings, meeting and chat notifications, right? So this is unmute, mute, or mute until I join, right? So I don't know if you've seen when messages come up in a meeting and there's a meeting chat, that's a good way to control what messages you get there. Okay. You can also manage notifications, follow a person's status, and get notified when they appear available offline. You can put their names in there. I'm going to put in Victor. I'm going to put in Abby, and I'm going to put in Roxy. So I work with them quite a bit. All right, I go back. And for calls, again, this is only if you have the calling features. There's an E5 or G5 license, or you can have the specific calling capabilities applied, separate from the larger solution set. So this is, again, when your Teams acts as a soft phone, whether whether a call rings or whether it forwards. Whether it goes to, if it's unanswered, or whether it goes to voicemail, or if it waits the number of seconds before rerouting. 20 seconds is the default. If you wanted to do more or less, you can configure that. Voicemails will show up in the calling app, where audio playback and transcript. So you can configure a voicemail here. You can specify in recorded greeting, call answer rules, greeting language, text to speech. It's a lot of things that you can do here. If your organization subscribes to it, and it's definitely something that's really, really useful to have, just because you have everything central to one place, and then you get a really a specific amount of control on how that works. All right. I'm not going to go through all of these options, but I would say if you do have it, just because not everyone has it, go through these options. If you have any questions, contact the person who invited you there to these sessions. Most likely it's your customer success manager. For my account, it's me. you know, Roxy, Abby, you know, those are all different people who have that role. If you have questions about those specifically, send them to those people. Okay. We're almost at time, but I wanted to stop and see if anyone had any questions, any concerns. What's coming in through the Q&A? Shane?
Right now, we don't have any other questions.
Okay, excellent. That's great. So one thing that I wanted to talk about, but I can't show in this environment, and mainly because I am already part of a call, and if I join another call, then it'll drop me from this call. But really, when you're getting to your meetings, you notice that different functionality is now showing up in your meetings. What I would say is you go to 3 dots and just look at the different functions that are there. I know that the product engineering has been putting a lot of development specifically into our meeting experience. If one of the things that you've noticed, I don't know if you have noticed, originally we had kind of a 2x2 setup where you have video of 4 people being displayed at the same time, assuming 4 people are showing video. But we recently moved within our government community clouds to 3x3 or 9 videos at the same time. We've recently allowed custom background images. So previously there was just blur. Custom background images are available now. Again, if you hit the 3 dots, specifically in the meetings, you can go ahead and manage those there, and select. If you go to select background images, if you hit the 3 dots and select the image that you want, it creates more of a customized experience. There are different features that are being rolled out, like as we speak. Another one is, let's say if you wanted to have your organization logo and you had that logo, you can put that as your background image. I know for me, because I support Teams, I like to have the Teams logo in the back. So if any of you guys have been in a meeting with me, you probably have seen the Teams logo in the back. One thing to note is that if you're looking at it, it may look backwards to you, just because the way that you look at it and the way that someone else is looking at it sometimes is reversed. If it looks background, look at the image and use that image for your background when it becomes available to use custom backgrounds. And just know that if it looks backwards to you, it still could look right to the other person. Also, there's a new feature that came out recently, even just to Microsoft. There's Together mode, and I really like that. It's where you take your image and your video that you have, and it embeds it into another image. So you can have, like in a classroom type setting, the more and more people join that, it's called Together mode. It allows multiple videos to be put on one screen, and it looks like you're in a classroom setting where it shows like there's multiple rows of people, and there's the video of one is right next to the other as in one single image. So these are kind of things to look out for, specific functionality that has been recently coming to us and that we've been pushing to get into the commercial versions and the government versions sooner and sooner. So what I would say is just keep monitoring that and look at what's there, play around with the different options. Go into the team specifically, get comfortable with asking what apps are available. Initially, a lot of organizations will turn off apps. There is, I'll post in the chat, where you can look at apps that are currently available. There's a lot, I would say there's over 100. And what you want to do, so these are for applications that you are currently using. So let's say if you're using Jira, for instance, and you're managing a project, there's a way that you can build that in the team. Even with first party stuff, if you're looking at managing a project for any of those project managers out there, you can use Planner, and you can assign tasks to people and see the status of a task. And you can go ahead and see what the progress is, and there's some really nice reports that can be generated as a result, and so on and so forth, to see where you are with that specific task. And you can use Teams as a tool to help manage what's been working, and you can segment the different aspects of the project based on the different channels, and then you can have your consolidated view. All right, let me just look at questions. Anything else come up here, Shane?
Yeah, someone mentioned, how do you delete the notification number on the chat icon if you haven't responded to a chat message?
So are they referring to the number 2?
Yeah, I guess that just means if you read it, it'll mark it as read.
Correct. Yeah. So no, well, actually it'll take it away. So in this case, I've got 2. This good morning team chat, or morning team, that I have. So if I click on this, it'll go to 1. If I click on this, it'll go to 0, right? Once I click away from there, or it'll just disappear. So again, these alerts are here for your benefit in terms of alerting to you what you may have not have seen. And I think I've showed you before, we can trick something you may have seen, but you want to keep it as unread and show it there as something that you've got action. You can do that. So you have absolute control over what goes there. Things that you've seen and things that you haven't seen. And if something that you've seen but you wanted to action it later, mark it as unseen. Hope that answers that question. Okay, can we use the calendar function of Teams to replace Outlook calendar? So that's a good question, Delia. Your question is, as you're looking at your calendar specifically, what your calendar basically is a view into your Outlook calendar. The goal for Teams is not necessarily to replace your Outlook calendar. The goal into Teams is to have all the things that you need to manage your daily work in one consolidated place. So if you go to your calendar, and in this instance the calendar is not functioning here, so I can't pull it up. Well, here it is. I'm sorry. I didn't pull it in initially. So this is your Outlook calendar. So it shows all the meetings that you've got. You can schedule new meetings, right? You can add the title. You can put your attendees. Let's say I put Roxy. Let's say I put Abby, right? Victor during this meeting, right? And let's say that I'm trying to schedule something, let's say for tomorrow. And so if you notice the suggested times, so let's say if I have something that they're busy, it would mark it in red. In this case, because it's a test tenant, there isn't many things in this calendar, but if they weren't, it would say suggested times based on availability, and so on and so forth. So I can schedule meetings from Teams, but really what it's doing is pushing it to your Outlook calendar. I'm going to discard this, and all the items that are here are specifically to your Outlook calendar. Now you can join a meeting here by clicking into it, and you go to join, and then it'll launch in that meeting specifically, assuming it's, you can go in advance of the time, but generally you'll be by yourself until this is the time that other people will join too. So you can use it to manage your meetings specifically, but in terms of things that are not Teams oriented, like let's say if you had a different kind of meeting that had a call-in number, if you didn't have the calling plan, you wouldn't be able to pull that in. If you wanted to look at it by day, whether you wanted to do it by work week, and work week is just Monday to Friday. Weekends include Saturday and Sunday. I generally like to go to work week. So that's kind of how it works. It's not to replace your Outlook calendar, but it's to create that parallel experience between your Outlook calendar and Teams such that you don't need to go to your Outlook calendar as much. Another thing, so if I go to, I'm going to go to this later, just towards the end, in case you guys wanted to see this. I don't want to get a chance of getting disconnected. So if you go to schedule a meeting, there's live event 2. There is a special session specifically geared towards live events. So if you're interested in attending that, contact the person who invited you to the session and say, hey, I'm interested in a live event. So the session that we're doing now is a live event where you have myself and Shane as presenter, or sorry, I'm a producer, Shane is a presenter. You know, the different roles allow you to do different functions. Now, you all who are listening to us are attendees. With attendees, you can listen to the audio, you can listen to the video or watch the video. If you have questions, the way you interact is by the QA, which you've been doing, versus a regular Teams meeting where everyone can come off mute and talk and share content. So it all depends on which ones are appropriate for the type of meeting you're having. In this case, sometimes we have hundreds of people on this call. So if we allowed everyone to be unmuted, it can sometimes be disruptive. And in this case, we're mainly presenting content, and we wanted to solicit feedback from you guys via the Q&A, so that works perfectly in this scenario where we're presenting content, and me as a producer, I kind of elect which content is going to be viewed, and I'll call on different presenters to share content. But traditionally, you want those roles to be the people who are putting on the production. A live event is more like a production than it is a meeting. And then you have your presenters who are going to participate in that webinar-like experience. All right, I hope that answered your question. What I would say, get more and more comfortable scheduling meetings in Teams. If you haven't done so already, I know many of you guys are transitioning from Skype. Keep in mind, Teams is not Skype 2.0. There are the meeting aspect and the chat aspect that you have in Skype, but it's very, very different. And there's a lot of things that we're continually adding in Teams to give you better and better experiences. So I would say, whenever possible, schedule your meetings in Teams, get comfortable with some of the functions. If you need a refresher on what some of those things are, we're happy to get some content to you. Again, go to the person who's invited you to the session, ask them questions, and they'll be happy to help you get more comfortable. For the specific Teams aspect of Teams, that's where you want to bring in content on a specific subject and bring in those people who are helping you and collaborating with you on that subject. Segment the topics by channels, and look at where you can take existing business processes and where it makes sense, bring it into Teams so you can get some efficiency out of it. The scenario that I like to highlight is, so let's say that Shane and I are working on a project. So initially, him and I are shooting around ideas, and so I come up with an agenda. I'm like, hey, Shane, I'm planning to do project A. Here's an agenda in which I want to work around. So I create an email message. The email message has text, then it has an attachment of the agenda. So Shane would look at that agenda and maybe track changes and save a different version, and put his commentary saying, oh, I think you should add this topic and that topic. So then I update that version, and I've got multiple versions floating around. So Shane and I are finally on the same page, but now we're going to bring Roxy in. So Roxy is like, all right, can I have the history of it? So I'm forwarding a bunch of email messages. I'm like, hey, his was our original agenda. Here's our updated agenda. And now she's on the same page. So let's say I add in Abby or somebody else. So I have to go through those iterations every time. The beauty of Teams is that you create it centrally in one place. Any of the different assets that you want to bring in towards that topic are essentially included, such that if I'm adding somebody, so let's say Shane and I are working within a team, and let's say the first channel is the agenda. He can put his commentary right in. We're updating the document at the same time, which is called co-authoring. So his comments are, we can both be working the same version at the same time. If I want to go back to previous versions, you can still do so via the version control, but it saves time and energy. In this way, when we add Roxy or we add in Abby or Victor, we have the ability to just add them to the team, and they've got the history of everything that we've done on that specific topic or subtopic. Just think about different ways that you're working and how you can integrate teams to do things in a more efficient way or easier way, or reducing the work time. As you get more and more comfortable, specifically in Teams, starting adding in apps. So if you're doing requirements management, you can use Jira. If you're doing code management, you can use GitHub. Now all of those things that you need become available in the same place. All right, any more questions?
I don't see any right now.
Okay, it's been a quiet group. That's kind of all the content that I wanted to share today. So what I would say, I'll hang on for a few minutes in case something comes up, but feel free to ask, happy to help. But if there's nothing else that you're interested, I hope that you guys have gotten something good out of the session. I hope you learned a couple of things that you didn't know about previously. And I hope you continue your journey in Teams and getting more and more comfortable with it and using it for different things to work more effectively and efficiently. Thank you very much. And thank you, Shane. I really appreciate your support here.
Thank you, and have a wonderful week, everybody.
Just to close, I haven't configured this version to connect to my mic and camera. And the reason being is I wanted my main client that I'm using for Teams to be the only thing that can access it. So I'm gonna stop that just because I don't want to have the overlap between different modalities, whether it be browser or web, and I wanted all my connections to be within the Teams client because that's where I take most of my meetings. All right, well, I'll stay on for a few minutes in case any other questions come up, but it's been a pleasure going on this journey with you, and I hope you'll continue on and learn more and more things.